Beast Wars Season 2, Episode 4, Tangled Web. Of course, you can probably guess which characters have a focus in this episode, and it is, of course, Tarantulas and Blackarachnia. Quick Strike also gets a bit of focus in this one as well. And every episode with them, like, I realized after watching this episode, I was like, man, Starscream had nothing on these two. Like, I thought he was bad because he's always like, oh, I'm going to betray Megatron and I'm going to try to defeat him and stuff. Which he finally had his moment in the movie. And even then, he only got to live that out for like 5 minutes or something until Galvatron came in and like disintegrated him and turned him into a ghost. But this episode, it starts off really simple. Megatron's like, okay, I found out that there's basically this new place that we can use as, you know, an energon deposit, you know, location, so we can set up a new lab there and get a bunch of good energon, and plain and simple. So I want Blackarachnia, Tarantulas, and Quick Strike to go, you know, go there. Waspinator and Inferno, you guys go set up a tower. That was like, that wasn't even a part of the series. It was like they did that thing and there's like a silly little scene where they set up the tower and the tower fell on Waspinator. Very irrelevant. But the arachnids going off and doing their own thing. We have Tarantulas, who of course wants to find a new base. We have Blackarachnia, who is always doing something. And then, you know, Quick Strike, who's just kind of being tricked by Blackarachnia because she's like the hot girl, and so she's like tricking him and saying like, oh, I'm sure you're super tough and everything. So he's being tricked by that. Tarantulas is like, oh, you know, maybe with this amazing new location, the Maximals might want to come in and throw a hitch into Megatron's plans. So he uses like this, basically like a mini satellite array, and he puts it inside of some of the equipment that they're using, which they did it in the weirdest way possible, because when Blackarachnia was talking with Quick Strike and she's trying to trick him into carrying way more stuff than she wants to, Tarantulas is behind them. He's like probably like 15 feet behind them, and so he takes out this thing and he launches it like a freaking missile into this thing, and I'm like, they didn't see that? Like, and he threw it. He didn't throw it into something next to him. He threw it towards them. Like, I honestly, when he first threw it, I thought he was throwing it at Quick Stop, or Quick Strike. I don't know, Quick Stop. I thought he was throwing it at them, and then it landed into like basically like some rebar that was like directly next to them, and I'm like, how in the world does that make any sense? Like, he launched that thing, and it was so crazy, and it hit, and then it like transformed into like a little satellite, and I was like, how did they not see that? Like, Blackarachnia is looking towards him, and I understand not paying attention, but when someone makes like a certain gesture that's just really weird and over the top, especially when like Tarantulas was by himself, like it was just the three of them in this room, and he was just over there by himself, like, you know, talking to himself, which Megatron does all the time. It's like, you know, maybe the Maximals will want to throw a hitch into his plan, and then that'll allow me to get this place as, you know, my new lair. And he just like flicks this thing 15 feet, and I was just like, that was such a weird way for them to do that. It looked cool animation wise, but I was like, that's such a weird way to do that story wise, because that just made no sense whatsoever. But they don't see it. Little satellite gets in there, and so of course the Maximals do end up picking that up, and then that's how we get introduced to Rat Trap and Silverbolt in this episode. So both the Fusers actually get a bit of focus in this, which I thought was really nice. And so the Predacons, you know, our little trio of Predacons, they go to this new base, and then we have Silverbolt and Rat Trap kind of tracking them down. And it starts off really simple. They're setting up the equipment and stuff, and Blackarachnia goes to kind of mess with Tarantulas a little bit, because he's kind of looking around like, this would be a pretty nice lair and stuff. Or he's kind of just looking around, and then Blackarachnia comes in like, you know, this would be like a pretty cool base if it was really fortified. And he's like, and he's kind of trying to play it off like, yeah, it would be. And she's kind of basically just like, you know, cut the crap, alright? Like, I know you're mad about your old lair being destroyed. I know you want this place. And he's like, yeah, but it could be a lair for all of us. And so he's like, you know, he tries to convince her and Quick Strike. And she's like, you know, I don't want to team up with you against Megatron. I was surprised they didn't have her say again, But she was like, why would I team up with you? So he kind of went to Quick Strike and was like, hey, I know you're bored, because this whole thing is like, man, I really want to fight somebody. He's like, hey, I know you like to fight, so if you join against me, we'll fight both the Maximals and we'll fight against Megatron. So you have a ton more people to fight. So he was pretty much in, and that was all there was to it. He was like, sweet, sure, I'll do that. And he was mad. He was like, if you're lying and this is kind of something else, then I'll destroy you myself. So he basically had them both because Blackarachnia was already there. So she was like, I guess, whatever. Like, I'm stuck now. So, excuse me, they have like the little team up where they decide, oh, excuse me, this will be our little base and stuff. And then Silverbolt and Rat Trap go looking for them, but Tarantulas destroys the little satellite array because he's like, oh, because once he got there, he realized like, oh, this place is actually pretty sweet. I could take this for myself. He was just gonna mess up Megatron's plan. Like, it wasn't even initially. It wasn't even to take the layer. It was just f Megatron. Let his plan fail. And then when he got there, he was like, oh, I should destroy this, the satellite, because I could at least try to find a way to take this for myself. And so they lose the signal, but then they have to, track him down, because Silverbolt's like, well, we could try to sniff him out, and he's a wolf, and of course Rat Trap is a rat, so it's like, alright, I guess that'll work. And he gives some stupid, silly freaking speech, and he takes off, and they have like some really cheesy music when he does like his speeches and stuff, and it's so funny. Like, it worked. It's like cheesy, but it's cheesy in the best way, and he takes off and stuff. And Rat Trap is like, man, I thought Optimus gave horrible speeches. And it was so funny. I was just like, yep, it's just like the beacon of hope type thing. Like, every time it's just like, we have to be, adventurous. And we have to figure out what's going on. And we have to stop our enemies before they can stop us. And all just really cheesy stuff, but it works in the best way possible. He's like just super, super noble. And it just works in the best cheesy way that it possibly can. I'm like, man, this is so cheesy, and even the music is cheesy, but it just works. Like, it just works perfectly the way they have it going. So they end up tracking him down to the base, and then of course we have a crazy little shootout. We get to see some pretty cool stuff from Silverbolt, because he can actually throw missiles. Like, he basically, they're like the ends of his wings, and he can actually shoot them as missiles, which they showed him do that before. But he can also take them out and like flip them. Like, he'll grab them basically by the missile end, and then he'll flip them up, and he'll have like 2 missiles that he can throw manually. And I was like, that's actually kind of cool. And so he goes, he's kind of in his maximized form, so he's like taking them out and then like launching them manually himself with his hands. And Rat Trap is dealing with them on the ground as well. So it was actually very cool. It was like a nice little fight to get a bit of focus on Silverbolt. Got to see a little bit of Quick Strike, in his form as well. But it was pretty cool. Like, it was a simple little fight. It was fairly fast. And then when they realized, like, oh, they're protecting this layer, Silverbolt was gonna fly into it to see exactly what was going on, and then it like blows up, and so he gets launched backwards. And the first thing Tarantula says is like, oh man, mission failed, guess we gotta get out of here. So they instantly take off as soon as it's done. And Rat Trap is like, nice shot, man. And Silverbolt was like, I didn't do that. Which, you could, if you're watching it, that he didn't do it, because it blew up in front of him and he actually was sent flying backwards. So you could tell that it wasn't him. And when Rat Trap says that, he's like, nice shot. He's like, it wasn't me. He's like, well, like, who, like, then what happened? They kind of cut. It's like, oh, well, they mission failed for them, so I guess we succeeded. So they take off, and then the Predacons go back to Megatron, and he's super pissed that they failed. And then, of course, it cuts to the end of the episode, and it's like, oh, look who has a new layer, because he's like, a well-placed charge can make all the difference in the world. So he now has a new secret layer with all these energon cubes and stuff, and he's set for quite a while until Blackarachnia figures something out and finds out that he actually took that base for himself. But it was a pretty cool episode. And then in between all of this stuff about, oh, this is our layer, and the Maximals trying to find them, there is a really, really great subplot of them kind of finishing the arc of Tarantulas having control over Blackarachnia, because they kind of like to throw that in there, like, hey, still control you a little bit, don't F with me. So they end that in this episode in probably one of the coolest ways possible. Like, Blackarachnia, she's pissed. Like, she's tired of dealing with tarantulas controlling her. And, even when he brings up, like, her joining him, he's kind of like, I still have that mind link. You kind of don't have a choice anyway. So they go through this whole process, and she gets tired of it. And there's a scene where she's kind of just picking something up. And she's like, man, when I figure out what to do with this information from the disc, I'm going to get rid of this guy. And she says something, and he's like, oh, something on your mind. And she's like, what, me? Like, no way. And he tries to, read her mind, and he's like, oh, there's a part of your mind that's blocked off to me, and this is all the information from the golden disc. And so he tries to, like, force the mind link on her and try to, like, rip the information from her mind. And it ended up being a really awesome scene, because she broke free for a split second, and she grabbed an energon cube, and she had this blade, and it, like, splits into 4, and she puts the cube in between, like, the 4 corners of this, the blade that's spread out. And she's like, if you do not, let me go from this psychic link, I'll destroy us both. Like, I'll crush this energon cube, and it'll blow up, and it'll kill all of us in here right now. And he's like, you wouldn't do that anyway. And she's like, don't test me. And so it starts to crack. And he's like, I still control you, so I'm going to force you to basically put it down. And it doesn't work. Like, he does control her a little bit, because he's like, I would control you. And she was like, well, I'm sure the energon radiation will disrupt our link, but it didn't. And so he's like, see, I still control you. But he ended up messing himself up because the psychic link worked 2 ways. So she crushed the cube a little bit more, and more radiation came out, and it affected her. And then that psychic link, it jumped back to tarantulas. And they're both, like, just dying. Like, they're both in pain. And she's like, I will crush this thing until I die. And I'll end us both. Like, it was a really great moment for her character. Because, she's always doing her own little thing. But she was just, like, super badass in that moment. Like, I'll kill myself so you don't have to control it. Like, I'll be free either way. It'll be one way or the other. And she's like, just cut the psychic link. And I'll stop this. Or otherwise we'll both go. And he was trying to hold in there, and Tarantulas is trying to keep control, but he's like, fine. He was like, I can't, like, I don't want to die. So he actually cut the psychic link, and she dropped the cube, and it was like, all right, like, she freed herself. And I was like, that was a really awesome moment for her character, where she was willing to just go out, like, I don't care, like, I'm gonna be free from your crazy mind control stuff. Whether I live or die, it doesn't matter. So I love that moment. That's probably my favorite moment in the whole episode, was them having that conversation and her really forcing her way out of his control. And I was like, that was just a great moment for her character for sure. So I love that scene. So she's finally broken free of his control, and now she has the information of the golden disc all to herself. And I'm sure, once again, that'll come up later with Dinobot and his stuff. But it was very cool. It was a really great scene. Like I said, definitely my favorite scene in the whole episode, just because it was, like, such a hardcore scene from her character. It was just really, really cool. So certainly loved that. The action, like I said, was pretty cool, especially the ending, getting to see Silverbolt kind of just do different moves, use his missiles in different ways. So that was pretty cool. Rat Trap had some cool stuff too, where he's like diving and shooting and stuff like that. So pretty simple but pretty fun. Nice little fight there. And now Tarantulas has a new layer, and he'll be doing some other secret stuff. I don't know if, I'm assuming he's not going to try to leave the planet anymore, especially since the alien thing already happened, because I believe that was his whole prediction. Like, pretty sure these aliens are coming in to kill us, and now they've all survived. So now he's just doing some other evil henchman type stuff on his own, maybe to kill Megatron, maybe to just make himself stronger, which would probably lead to him trying to kill Megatron, who knows. But it was really cool. It was a nice episode. That part between Blackarachnia and Tarantulas is definitely the coolest one, though, with her just taking control of that situation. Like, I'm getting out of this mind link one way or the other. So just another epic moment for her character, and her will to truly survive. So that was really cool. But fun episode, of course. If you guys have any comments, please put them down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.